Welcome back to the third part of this Building Public series where I'm building end-to-end a real-time translation app. In today's video, I'm going to be taking you through the scaffolding and the setting up of the React application. So let's get into it. So here is my project and I have it open in VS Code at the moment. And as you'll notice, I now have this client folder where I have created essentially the bare bones of my React application. So if I open this up and I have a look at some of the configuration, I'm actually using Vite as the framework for this React app. So just to go into a little bit more details about what Vite is, let me just bring this up and I'm going to split my screen as well. So Vite is a build tool and it's great for building front ends. It's kind of like the backbone upon which you can create a React application. There's various different ways that you can create a React app. There's kind of like a deprecated way which is called create React app. And then there's this Vite tool as well. There's a whole bunch of other ways as well. But from recent experience, this is actually one of the better ways I've found to create, maintain and run a React application. So it's really nice. So there's some configuration files in here that just store like the settings for the Vite configuration. But on top of that, I've essentially set up a React application, which is a TypeScript React application. If you're not using TypeScript for your React apps, I highly recommend it. And then on top of that, you'll notice some more configuration as well. So I've got this tailwind.config.js. So on top of Vite, I'm also making use of Tailwind, which is a CSS framework, which is utility first. What that basically means is that by installing Tailwind within your React project, you get access to all of these different utility classes that you can literally just type out and you can leverage within your components. It does take a little bit of time, so it has a little bit of a learning curve just to learn the basic sort of like utilities that you can use. But when you get used to it, it saves you so much time compared to something like Bootstrap, for example, or, God forbid, just bare bones CSS. So highly recommend Tailwind. And what's quite nice as well is they actually have sort of like components and ready-made pages and features that you can actually use as well, which is really nice. And then the final piece of the puzzle is Hero UI. So if I open up my package.json file, these are all the dependencies that I currently have within this React app. So as you'd expect, we've got React Redux, which I'm going to use for state management. We've got Hero UI, which I'll go into in just a moment. We've got Tailwind, which is great. And we've got Vite, which is obviously what I mentioned before. It's the kind of backend framework for it. So the only one that I'm going to sort of dive into now, which I haven't explained, is Hero UI. So if I open this up, so Hero UI, once again, is another package that you can integrate with React. And it's a UI library. So if you're working with React and you're working with Tailwind, there are some components that you can use from the Tailwind website. But to be honest, it's quite limited. So for every other component that you need for your user interface, you'll essentially have to build it from scratch, unless you use a library like this, Hero UI. It essentially has a complete catalog of components and user interface modules that you can use straight away. They've literally thought of pretty much anything that you would need within your user experience. So this includes things like pagination, tabbing, cards, and if I just scroll through this a little bit more as well, yeah, the formatting of different types of cards as well, accessibility, dark mode, light mode, and if I have a look at some of the actual components as well, you can see here there's literally a list of all the different types of components you could ever really need. So yeah, this is massively useful and will save you a lot of time if you use a UI library like this. One of the advantages too is that it integrates really nicely with React. So that makes it super simple to use. So those are sort of like the main components to my React application. Now let me show you a little bit more about what's going on here. So you might remember before that we created the Django server, and within the Django server we have two servers running within there. We have the sort of like core Django server which serves up APIs, and then we have the WebSocket server, which is what receives and sends responses to the client based on incoming speech. So to complement the backend server, essentially what I've done here is I've created a really simple React application. What I'm going to do quickly as well, as you can see there's all these errors that are coming up, is because I need to install the dependencies within the React app. So if I come into the client, and I install those dependencies, okay, this should make some of the warnings calm down within some of these files. Okay, so basically within this app.tsx file, which is kind of the main entry point to the React app. Well, to be fair, main.tsx actually is, and that imports app. But if I come into the app file, you'll notice this is a very simple application. It's literally just one page with one single route, I believe. Yeah, so if I come into the routing, let me try and find where I put the routing. Yeah, so we've got a single route essentially, which is basically just the app file. And essentially what we have is just two buttons. A button, which is just sort of like a dummy example that I set up, but then a button which starts the transcription demo. And when the transcription demo has been activated, then it renders the transcription demo component. So if I go into this, now there's quite a few different things that's going on in here. So the first thing, just kind of working chronologically, is we leverage this custom hook that I created. This hook is what opens up the WebSocket connection and manages all of the messages going backwards and forwards. So it will send the incoming speech through my microphone to the WebSocket server, and it will then receive responses back, and it will render all of that within state, which can then be used within the components to display it on the screen. So there's a whole bunch of different sort of like callbacks and helper methods in here. So for example, this callback is what handles an incoming server message, so a message that comes back from the WebSocket server. So there's a whole bunch of logic that's going on here. There's a callback for actually starting up a WebSocket connection. So you can see we're instantiating a new WebSocket connection, and we're sort of waiting for something to come back, and then we open up the microphone. So that's really handy. We've got another callback for actually stopping the WebSocket connection and closing the connection. Another callback for clearing the session. So as you can see, this kind of resets all of the state within this hook as well. And then we just make all of these different variables and state available for components to use with this return block here. So within the transcription demo, you can see we're instantiating this hook, and we're basically extracting all of these variables from the hook, which we then use within the user interface. So essentially, based on all these variables, we then use this to render something useful within the UI. And one thing that I thought would be really nice as well is to actually separate out the different speakers. So this is covering a concept called speaker diarisation. So with modern speech-to-text services, obviously incoming speech or incoming audio can be very noisy. And this has been an area of study within the AI field for a long time, but now services are becoming really good at being able to identify and separate two speakers speaking, or more than two, if you've got a whole room of people. So the process of essentially identifying and isolating and separating out speech from various different speakers is called speaker diarisation. And luckily, with the setup that I've got on the back end where we're processing the speech, it actually gives me information about the different speakers. So what we're doing here, in the hook, we are actually kind of like recording the different speakers that have been identified. And then what we're going to do is we're going to render all of the incoming speech from different speakers so that you can actually switch between them, which is really cool. And that's it for now. Obviously, looking through code doesn't exactly bring it to life. So let's actually just run this and let me show you what it actually looks like. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the different servers that I need to run. Let me minimize this as well. In my README file, I've just got some helpful little code snippets that I can use. So in the client folder, I basically just want to run this, npm run dev. That's going to run the Vite application. Okay, and it runs on port 5173. So if I just open that up, yeah. Now I haven't really added any styling or anything like that. This is literally meant to be completely bare bones. Hence why it looks like a website from like the 90s. But this will all come later. I just want to test the functionality for now. Okay, now let me set up some other servers as well. I need to open up the Django server. So I'm going to move into that folder and I'm going to run the server. So this is creating my HTTP server. I'm then going to create my WebSocket server as well, so my Daphne server. Okay, that's good. And then one more thing that I need as well, because the Daphne server relies on a Redis channels application running. So I need a Redis container running on my local computer. So what I can do is I can run this command, and that is going to open up a Docker container called Redis transcription via these ports using this image, which is publicly available. So let me run this in one more terminal. Okay, this container already exists, right, so I don't actually need to create it again. So what I can do, come over to Docker, and it's already running, so actually, yeah, that's all good. If I wanted to, I could just click on this, I believe, and it should kind of like show me the logs of this Redis container as well, which is nice. But anyway, that's running now, so that's cool, we've got everything that we need. Let me zoom out in this window and just open this up a bit more. So we'll be able to see the logs coming through here as well. I'm going to stay on the Daphne server for now because that's where most of the sort of like legwork is going to happen in terms of the back and forth with the microphone. But let me test this out now. So in the user interface, let me open up the mic. I'll say some very basic speech once again. My Gujarati still hasn't improved, but I've still got a couple of sentences that I can use. So let me give this a go. Maru naam Arun છે. મારું નામ અરુણ છે. તારું નામ અનિશ છે. Okay, pretty good. I mean, yeah, this is leveraging the WebSocket connection, as we know. As you can see, we've got the Gujarati text at the top here, the English text here. So yeah, this is perfect, really. It's splitting it out by speakers. Now what I want to do is I want to test it with different speakers. Now, I can't duplicate my speech to have two speakers in the room with me right now. But what I am going to do is I'm going to find a video of somebody speaking Gujarati. And I found one on YouTube a while ago, so let me just find this. Okay, right, I found a video on YouTube of supposedly a motivational speech in Gujarati. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up let's just clear the session. And let's start again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the mic. I'm going to start speaking from my perspective here, and then I'm going to start this video just sort of like over to the side over here. And what this will do is it will identify me and that video as two different speakers, and then it will transcribe and translate those as it just did for one of the speakers, but it will now do it for two speakers. So let's give this a go. મારું નામ અરુણ છે. મારું નામ અરુણ છે. મારું નામ અરુણ છે. તારું નામ અનિશ છે. મારું નામ અરુણ છે.
મારી પાછળની સીટમાં છોકરું બેઠેલું ને એની મમ્મી ને એનો પપ્પો.
Okay, right. So, we can see that it's worked, which is great. It's separated out the different speakers. So obviously I was just, saying my name is Aaron over and over again. Now, what's interesting is that, so we've separated out the speakers. Okay. Obviously the user interface is not really that intuitive right now. I need to clean that up and make that way more intuitive. But it was able to separate them out, and it was able to transcribe and translate them, which is great. And it did this really fast as well. I mean, in terms of like a response time, I'm really happy with how quickly it's able to do all of this. There are a few issues. So the first one is clearly kind of the text is being broken up, and I think this is something to do with the way that the tokens are being saved in the database. So obviously between these two, it looks as though AR and UN are treated as two different tokens, when really it should all be the same token, because that is, that's my name there. So clearly it's kind of breaking up the text into tokens which are too granular. Some of these tokens should be merged together. So maybe that's an optimization that I can make on the back end in terms of looking at the start and end times of tokens and merging them together if they are kind of corresponding with each other. So that's one thing. The second thing I notice is that it's clearly identified two speakers, but then in terms of the sort of like indexing of these speakers, speaker 1 makes sense, but then speaker 2 is being labeled as speaker 3. So I'll need to investigate this and figure out why it's kind of skipped speaker 2 and gone straight to speaker 3. But in terms of where we started and actually kind of like the foundations of what we need, this is really promising. Obviously, this user interface is absolutely horrific. I'm going to make this look way better and way more fun and engaging as well. But I'm really happy with this. So one more thing that I want to do is I want to have a look in the backend server and just see what has been saved. So I've stopped the session here. I can just keep it open for now. I don't think I need to close it. Let me just log into the Django server. Let's open up a session. Yeah, this looks like the session here. Okay, right. So as you can see, we've gotten all of this Gujarati text, which looks like an amalgamation of both my speech and the video speech, because as you can see in the translated text, it includes mine and it also includes the video. So that makes sense. It's kind of just combined everything together. There were 710 total tokens, which is cool. And then if I really wanted to, I can kind of dive into the tokens here as well. What would be interesting actually, so if I take this session ID and I come over to the tokens and now I filter by this session ID, and then let's go to the translation. So yeah, right. In terms of that issue I was speaking about regarding my name being split up into 2 different tokens, you can see here it is doing that, because you look in these sequential sort of like tokens that have been logged, and you can see this by the IDs, they're all sequential. It treats the word my as 1 token, name as 1 token, but then Aaron, which are the 2 kind of constituent parts of my name, is being treated as 2 tokens. And that is interesting. So there's probably got to be some kind of like processing technique that I can do on the back end to merge these together into 1 complete word rather than just keeping them as 2 constituent words. And just thinking about it, what would be really nice here is, so at the moment, obviously, we've got a very basic web application, but on top of the transcription, what would be really nice is to add a way to be able to go back and look at previous sessions, look at previous conversations that were recorded, maybe having some sort of like analytics or metrics off the back of it, and really start to productize this, not only in terms of the transcription, which is obviously the core functionality that I wanted to embed within this web app and mobile app down the road, but also make this even more useful. So give people the ability to go back to previous sessions, customize their profile, maybe even choose from different languages. Obviously I'm starting with Gujarati because that's relevant to me, but then choose between different languages as well. And the long-term vision is, as a language is being transcribed and a translation is coming up in real time, being able to nudge the user to say something back. That would be really cool. So to wrap up and summarize, I've taken the backend Django server and the WebSocket server, and I've essentially put a very ugly basic front end in front of it, all built within React using Vite and Hero UI and the Tailwind framework. Now the next step after this is going to be to make that front end way more intuitive and much more attractive. On top of that, whilst also enhancing the back end as well. So really, now that we've got the main components, we've got the back end aspect and we've got the front end, now it's about making this into a real product and optimizing this as much as possible, which is the fun part. If you enjoyed this video, leave it a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because I'm going to be uploading weekly with new episodes in this series. And if you haven't seen the previous 2 episodes, then go back and watch those now. Other than that, I'll see you soon.